We have just learned that special counsel Robert Mueller has broadened the scope of his investigation. And what I mean by that is Russia is not the only foreign country that this investigation is looking into. There are now reports that Donald Trump Jr., Trump's eldest son, actually had a meeting with a Gulf emissary, and the whole point of that meeting was offering to help Trump win the election. So let me give you the details that we've learned through the New York Times. According to the reporting, 3 months before the 2016 election, a small group gathered at Trump Tower to meet with Donald Trump Jr. One was an Israeli specialist in social media manipulation. Another was an emissary for 2 wealthy Arab princes. The third was a Republican donor with a controversial past in the Middle East as a private security contractor. So who was that controversial figure? Erik Prince, the private security contractor and the former head of Blackwater. He's actually the person who arranged this meeting. Now, let me give you the details on the other individuals who were involved in the meeting. The emissary, George Nader, told Donald Trump Jr. that the princes who led Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates were eager to help his father win as president. Then there's the social media specialist, Joel Zamel. He extolled his company's ability to give an edge to a political campaign. By that time, the firm had already drawn up a multi-million-dollar proposal for a social media manipulation effort to help elect Trump.
So I think that some right-wingers have lost sight of something. It is illegal for a foreign country to spend money in our elections. Illegal. It's not unclear. Everybody knows that. Apparently, except the entire Trump campaign. Meanwhile, Donald Trump Jr. having meetings first with the Russians saying, oh, you're gonna give me dirt on Hillary Clinton that you, quote, I love it. The taking assistance from a foreign country. By the way, if they spent money to get Hillary Clinton's stolen emails, either they stole themselves or they paid for it, et cetera, that would be an in-kind contribution and deeply illegal. Donald Trump Jr. says, I love it, right? Now in this case, the Israelis. Look, it's one thing if a Jewish American like Sheldon Adelson or any American that supports and loves Israel says, hey, like not only do I love Israel, but I love the right-wing government of Israel, and here I'm gonna give you a bucket of cash to do my bidding, right? Now, I think we should get money out of politics because I don't want people buying our government officials. But at least they're an American that would be legal, okay? It shouldn't be legal, but it is. It's a different thing if an Israeli businessman says, here's a multi-million-dollar effort to help your election. And you say, oh great, let's have a meeting about how I'm gonna take that. Well, that's a meeting about illegal activity that you're about to do. Then we haven't even gotten to the Arabs yet. These guys who at the same time are running a campaign going, we gotta stop all Muslims from entering the country until we figure out what the hell is going on. Meanwhile, they're secretly meeting with Muslims saying, how can you give me money? Because once I win the election, I'll support you guys and I'll do whatever you need. So it's not just a betrayal of our laws and our principles, it's also, funny enough, a betrayal of their own campaign promises.
That's right, a betrayal of their own campaign promises and a betrayal of the best interests of Americans. So one of the issues that kept coming up in this reporting that I found fascinating was that one of the biggest issues that the Saudi prince and the interests of the United Arab Emirates was the issue of Iran, right? They hated the Iran nuclear deal. They wanted to do away with the Iran nuclear deal. Now, I want to be clear about something. Obviously, this is all under investigation at the moment, and one thing that we don't know, it's unclear whether such a proposal was executed by and Donald Trump Jr. responded approvingly, according to a person with knowledge of the meeting and after those initial offers of help. Okay, so the reason why I mention that is because they offered all these things to Donald Trump Jr. We are uncertain at this point as to whether or not those offers were accepted by the Trump campaign. But with that said, considering the interests that were very apparent by these people who met with Donald Trump Jr. and considering the actions that Donald Trump has already taken as president, it seems as though there might have been some sort of trade-off.
So, and by the way, if you say, hey guys, look, you need an investigation to find out if they actually accepted the illegal offer, great, that's what the investigation is about. And if it turns out Mueller comes back and goes, no, they didn't accept it, so they shouldn't have taken the meeting and it was highly irregular and careless and reckless of them to take the meeting, but they didn't accept it, so it's not illegal. Okay, then that's what the investigation found, right? That's the whole point. But of course, Trump is, I love this part. In his attack against the story, he said, it was a long and boring story. In other words, I can't read. So
it was a long story, I will say that. It wasn't boring though.
Yeah, and it's about you, Donald, and it's about how you might have committed crimes or your team might have committed crimes. He's like, still, lots of words. Don't like that many words. So he says, long and boring story indicating the world's most expensive witch hunt has found nothing on Russia and me. So now they are looking at the rest of the world.
Right, but okay. I mean, first of all, no one knows whether or not Mueller has found anything on Russia.
Yeah, he
right?
just keeps saying it. It's in the middle of the investigation, and he's like, and hence it must prove that I'm innocent. No, that's what we find out at the end of the investigation. In fact, they're taking a long time because there's a lot of evidence. So, and if it's a witch, like, what do you want them to do? They have evidence, including guys at the meeting like George Nader, who say, yeah, we met where a foreign government offered millions of dollars in assistance. Should they A, go, yeah, but I'd like to cover that up for the president, which would itself be illegal. B, say, I'm not gonna investigate it, I'm just gonna charge the president without an investigation. I wouldn't want either one of those things. Or C, do the investigation like they're doing now. No, what Trump acolytes say is, witch hunt! Don't ever do an investigation if it's of us, because they don't care about the rule of law. These are the guys who couldn't wait to take those meetings in the first place.
Right, so look, we again don't know whether or not Donald Trump Jr. accepted the offer from these individuals, but I do want to give you some more detail on what they did offer. Okay, so let's go to graphic 33. These are excerpts from the Times piece, which you should check out yourself. Now, when Trump locked up the Republican presidential nomination in early 2016, Mr. Nader began making inquiries on behalf of the Emirati prince about possible ways to directly support Trump, according to 3 people with whom Nader discussed his efforts, okay? Now, he explained to Donald Trump Jr. that the 2 princes saw the elder Mr. Trump as a strong leader who would fill the power vacuum that they believed Obama had left in the Middle East. And Nader went on to say that he and his friends would be glad to support Trump as much as they could. So what was offered? Well, a company connected to Zemel had been working on a proposal for a covert multi-million-dollar online manipulation campaign to help elect Trump, according to 3 people involved, and a 4th briefed on the effort. The plan involved using thousands of fake social media accounts to promote Trump's candidacy on platforms like Facebook.
Anna, that sounds like fake news. I was led to believe Donald Trump was against fake news.
Well, I mean, he's very much in favor of fake news if it favors him. But the disinformation, misinformation, fake news campaigns that we saw on social media, a lot of them have been tied to Russians, but it appears here that there could have been campaigns by other foreign countries as well.
So final piece for me is the connection between Erik Prince and George Nader. So George Nader is this guy who is, for lack of a better word, a fixer. So he goes and arranges meetings with incredibly wealthy individuals in the Middle East, or in some cases the Crown Prince, whether it's United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia, and people like Donald Trump's supporters, or people in his campaign, or in this case his son, Donald Trump Jr. And he's also the one that helped arrange the meeting that Erik Prince had with Russian officials in Seychelles Island. So there's George Nader again. My point to the authorities is, whatever you do, protect George Nader's life, because he's now giving, at least he's talking to Robert Mueller. Not only are very wealthy dictators in the Middle East unhappy about that, but also there's a dictator in Russia named Vladimir Putin who every once in a while will say, oh, what a bad break. My opponent just had a bathtub fall on him. Oh, what a bad break. A bunch of ambassadors wound up mysteriously dying, including in the backseat of their own car. People who committed suicide by shooting themselves twice, right? And by the way, Putin from time to time does it in foreign countries. So it's not like he doesn't mind interfering in other countries' affairs. I mean, just ask the UK about what happened there. So if Nader is giving evidence on what happened here, and Erik Prince ran Blackwater, his sister is Betsy DeVos, who got a nice little gift as became the education secretary. He was giving money to not only Republicans and his family have given millions upon millions of dollars, but on top of that, he would like to privatize some portions of our intelligence community and our military. He's made a public case for that. And now we have privatized some of our intelligence, and he would stand to gain from that effort. So there's a lot of money at play here. And when you hear a lot of money, or when Donald Trump hears it, he's like, yes, how do I get some of that? So apparently they were very eager to take these meetings to see how that could be funneled over to them or their campaign.
So what I found fascinating was how quickly Trump's right-wing supporters started defending Russia as soon as accusations of collusion came up. And I'm curious to see if they're going to treat Saudi Arabia in a similar fashion if this portion of the investigation continues to get more attention in the press.
That's a great point, Anna. You know what? Here's how it's gonna come. Not in the beginning, because they've been taught propaganda Muslims terrible, right? We gotta figure out what the hell is going on. We gotta ban them, right? But now it's inconvenient because Israel has a really solid alliance with Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. They're aligned against Iran and Qatar. And by the way, what has Trump done since he got elected? He has supported Israel, unsurprising, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, and he has attacked Iran and Qatar. What an amazing coincidence. Like all the sanctions he refuses to put on Russia. And he says maybe we should disband the, NATO, near Russia. Maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that to help Russia. These amazing coincidences, one after another. So what they're gonna have to do is, and watch. I always love saying this stuff ahead of time, okay? You will soon, and JR will find it for you. On Fox News, they'll start to say, well, I mean, Saudi Arabia, I mean, they're reforming. They're on a positive track. There are some governments in the Middle East that are doing good things if they align with Israel and Trump. So, right, and they will start to put positive notes about Saudi Arabia and specifically their Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who already did a PR effort. By the way, 60 Minutes helped him out by really soft pedaling him. But Fox News will begin to brainwash their audience. All Muslims bad, except, ironically, Saudi Arabia, where 15 out of the 19 September 11th terrorists came from. So they'll say, hate the rest of the Muslims, but the country where most of the terrorists who attacked us on 9/11 came from, they're great because they're buddies with Israel. Two easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.